welcome to BA Brew. I'm Lisa.
I'm Miruna.
And I'm Mike.
It's lovely to have Miruna with us today, who's our communications expert, I'd say. So, Mike met Miruna, how long ago was it, Mike?
It was the BA conference last year. I attended one of Miruna's workshops, which was it was crazily fun and also very informative. And I've worked with Miruna since in a workshop at the BA Manager Forum.
Ah, brilliant. So I've just been obviously getting up to speed on the kind of topics you've been covering. It sounds fantastic. So for you, Miruna, I think it became quite a big topic for you in terms of the background, your life, your background, living in various different places, different cultures. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. I was born and raised in Romania, but then I moved to Brussels, and I lived in Brussels, Belgium for 12 years. I started working there, so my professional life started in Brussels in different international environments. And I remember that I was at some point I was thinking about the way people arrived to work. It was so funny because you had people from Germany, so it was an international environment, right? A huge international department, and people from Germany, from the Netherlands, they would arrive very early in the morning, around 10. The Spanish people, the Italian people. It was so funny and then the way they would interact, and it's something that I started to pay attention to during my the following years, and I slowly became really passionate about how we interact with each other, what makes it work, what doesn't, where we fail, why. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, so it makes perfect sense and why it's become such an interesting and fascinating topic for you then. So just in terms of sort of an overview, I mean, we're all aware of communication types, but from your perspective, could you run us through a few of those?
Definitely. So we have verbal communication, which sounds easy because we make sounds, and the sounds make sense most of the time. But even verbal communication can be tricky sometimes when we don't have a perfect diction, for example, and this is something we can correct, or when we are very nervous and then we tend to speak faster. So anyway, verbal communication is a very important aspect of our communication in general. Then we have nonverbal communication, and this is our face mimic body language. So in a few words, our bodies speak, and ideally we should know what they say. So we should pay attention to our gestures, or like I said before, our face mimic. When we disagree with someone, does it show? Do we show or not? Or when we are on the other side, when we give a speech or we give a presentation and somebody is making a face, how do we feel about that? Will we let that impact the way we perform our job? Then paraverbal communication is not about what we say, but how we say it. And it relates to pitch, speed, tone. So we can speak, think about it like classical music. Like the classical music is a reference I use. The lower notes, we have a very serious, grave, and they make you think about a calm environment, right, or grave. Then you have music in a higher key, and that's very happy, and it's excitement and maybe a bit of panic. It depends on the music. The same happens when we speak, and preferably in a professional environment, we should use a lower key, because that it imposes respect. It means that we are on top of our communication, and I think that, and then we can talk, of course, about written communication, but this is something that we could talk about for hours, because we have the classical written communication, and of course we're only talking about our professional lives here. So emailing, We don't send faxes anymore, thank God for that. But then we have real-time communication. That's also, it can be challenging as well. So visual communication is another type, but we will not cover it today because it's a bit different from what we want to talk about. Yeah, so there are so many ways we communicate to one another.
That's why it's a huge topic, isn't it? There's so much to talk about. And like I say, there's so many different mediums in terms of how we communicate with each other.
Definitely.
No, that's it. So I think you mentioned earlier about how our styles are kind of defined perhaps by our childhood experiences from the people that we've seen and emulated. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that makes quite a big impact once you get to being an adult?
Yeah, definitely. I think it impacts our communication more than we know. Just think about, I have a question for you and you watching us. Who are you? And when I ask you, who are you, it's not in a philosophical sense, right? Who raised you? Who was there by your side? Who was your favorite teacher, your least favorite teacher? Who are your friends while you were growing up? So all these people had a communication, a certain way of communicating, right? So maybe you took some of those communication aspects without realizing it. A gesture, a word that you pronounce differently or that you use more frequently. All these impact us because we copy the others around us when we grow up. And then when we start our professional lives, we are most of the times very insecure because we don't have experience in the beginning. So we don't know what to expect from the new job, the work environment, the management, and our emotions will take over. And when emotions take over, that means that we do not have, we don't master it anymore. We don't control it anymore. We don't control the way we speak. We don't control the way we react to other people. So this is when our emotional past and everything behind us takes over. I think it's super important to realize the way we communicate and why we communicate in a certain way. I'll give you an example just to make it clear. I was raised by my grandmother, and she was amazing. She passed away a few years ago, but she was an amazing woman. When she was sad or something, when she didn't like something, she would completely, shut off to everyone. So it would become, it would be impossible to talk to her, And I realized I took that. I didn't know it. I mean, somebody told me when I was maybe in my 30s, and it was the first time I realized that was something I had picked from my grandmother because she raised me. And then I started thinking about what other things I could have, borrowed communication-wise from those around me. I find it very interesting.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's a very good example as well, because we're just like sponges when we're growing up, aren't we? We're taking on all different people around us. It's interesting as well, you were saying about how kind of your moods, how you're feeling, at the time, that all affects the way you communicate on that day, doesn't it?
Yes. And unless we pay attention to these communication patterns, we will simply transfer them to our kids and maybe co-workers or life partners, because when we spend a lot of time with someone, you realize that we tend to speak the same way or use at some point the same specific wording. So it's important, right?
Yeah, no, it is. It's making me think as well. So my daughter's 12 at the moment, and every now and again I hear her say something, I think, oh, she's got that from me. It really puts me off. Oh, it just shows you've really got to watch the way you communicate and the modeling good behaviour, I suppose.
Exactly. Yes.
So how about you, Mike?
Well, when Miruna was saying there about how our experiences kind of mold us. It made me think of some of my early influences, and you can get sort of cultural and media influences as well. And I think in my early 20s, and I'm only slightly over 30 now, but in my early 20s, I realized that a lot of the phrases I said were from Monty Python. And there were so many things. I'd end up quoting bits of Monty Python, and I'm pleased to say that I've moderated that a little bit, probably, and it's probably just as well, because most people wouldn't have a clue. But it's nice every so often to drop something in, sort of that is a Monty Python reference. So like nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, which you can say that people have no idea what you're talking about unless they've seen that film. And I have a problem in training courses. Again, a lot of my references back in the 70s and 80s, and I find on training courses I'm referring to 80s game shows. I'll use a catchphrase from that, and the people in the room will sort of, what's he talking about? It's just Mike. He's just going back to his roots again. Yeah. But you do have to be aware of those things and how actually they're not all relevant to the people you're communicating with. So the things that you know and you experience are unique to you, and some of them will be shared with other people. But if you rely on all of those things, you've got to watch that the people receiving the communication understand what you're talking about.
No. Yes, exactly. And the thing is that, you know, it's not bad that we have these communication patterns with us, but it can at some point impact in a negative way the way we interact with our coworkers if we don't pay attention, and if there's something negative that we picked from someone, that could play against us.
Yeah, and it comes back to that feedback that you mentioned earlier, that actually communication isn't one way. You've got to use what you get back, and that can be verbal, it can be non-verbal, but you need to look for that feedback and then adjust what you're doing, and that can become challenging at times, can be very challenging.
Yeah, it's both ways, like I say, isn't it? It's both ways. It's how you come across and it's how you receive the message as well, isn't it? I think maybe it's because I'm an analyst, but I always used to kind of overthink things quite a bit, and I'd be very sensitive to facial expressions, tones of voice. Why is this person really different to yesterday? They were fine yesterday. What's wrong today? They're a bit quieter today. Is it something I've done? You know, I think, I don't know, as the time goes on, you realise that they're probably just having a bad day. You know, it could just be something like that, but it's so easy to sort of, I don't know, I suppose miscommunicate yourself or interpret it incorrectly as well.
When you say these things, it made me think most of the times it's not about us. And it's something that we should always think about, you know, like in 98% of the time, maybe it's them, their lives, their problems. They're like definitely not about us. And it was
it takes you a while to realise. It takes you years to realise that, doesn't it? Because you think, oh, is it me? What have I done? Have I said something the wrong way? And then you start going back over the last 5 conversations you've had with them and things like that. But yeah,
he didn't say hi in the you know, this morning in the elevator. Why did I say something yesterday?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, thankfully I don't do that anymore now, because like you say, you realise after a while that a lot of time everyone's got their own life, their own set of circumstances, and they're just trying to get through the job, home life, all that kind of thing. So you might just have popped up at the wrong moment for them. So in terms of miscommunication, have you got any examples of that, Miruna?
Well, yes. I mean, miscommunication happens because like we just said, we communicate differently. And I realized that we, like we said before, we became so accustomed to not communicating properly. I mean, now I'm not surprised if someone doesn't read the entire email, like the entire thread, or if someone is not paying attention properly. I will just repeat once or twice or maybe a third time. But there are some miscommunication situations that can be funny. And I remember about the time I was supposed to go out with a friend to have brunch on Sunday, and I wanted to book a table, and I asked her. We were chatting on an app, and I was asking whether I should book for 4.5, and then she became super weird in her communication. Like she wouldn't write. I were just chatting normally, and then she stopped. And I was like, "What's wrong?" And like you say, Lisa, I was like, "Did I do something? Did I say something before?" I mean, you know. And then I was like, "Is something wrong?" And she says, "Well, 4 o'clock is not 4:30." I said 4.5, and she's like, 4.5 is not brunch time. I mean, we should maybe go there around 12. What I meant was 4.5 because they had just had a baby, right? And we were 4 grown-ups and a kid. And it was like, no, I meant 4.5, not 4.5 like time. So it was, yeah, it's, you know.
She sat there at the other end of that thinking, I don't want to go at 4:30.
That's what she was. She actually said it. 4:30 might be a bit too late because the little one is sleeping. You know, I was like, no.
It's so easy to miscommunicate, though, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
How about you, Mike? You've got some stories.
Yeah, I've got a slightly embarrassing story about a miscommunication.
These are the best. The best are the most. Yeah, the most.
Well, you definitely learn from it. I think the embarrassing ones are the things you learn from. Back in sixth form days, I can't remember what had been happening or whatever. I'd been to some sort of event. I think it was some kind of event, and I met some various people. And I got a message sent to me. That was it. It was a written note sent to me at sixth form. So this person passed me the note at sixth form from this young lady called Sarah, and asking me to, I think it was giving her phone number and arranging to meet up. And I just thought, oh, that's great. It's Sarah, really good. I'll look forward to meeting Sarah. But what I'd forgotten, I'd seen somebody. I know at the time I knew 8 people called Sarah, 8 young ladies called Sarah. But I'd assumed it was the person I'd spoken to at this event the day before. But it wasn't. I ended up going out meeting this person, sent a note back and thinking, so we ended up dating for a while, just on the basis of a misunderstanding. I thought it was this one of the other 7 Sarahs. But all of the Sarahs were lovely. They were lovely.
Oh, that's a brilliant story.
Yeah. Luckily, I only knew one Deborah, and I've married Deborah.
I bet she's called Deborah, Mike, not Sarah.
My wife was called Sarah. I would now be in trouble.
You've been a lot of trouble. Oh, doesn't it? But I was thinking back as well about technology and about when you say you see people typing. But one of my things, or actually, it wasn't one of mine. Somebody once pointed it out to me. A colleague of mine at work, and I remember her saying, "Oh, when this person sends an email, a group email, I'm always at the end of it. I'm always at the end of the recipient list. I don't think I'm in good favour with them, And I think, oh, and then I started getting paranoid myself, thinking, oh, is this true? So now, then I went on to manage a team a few years later, and then I found myself every time I communicated with my team, it's the names up just so they didn't think I had favourites. It's strange, isn't it? The things you do and the way you work around technologies. Yeah.
I remember the first year when I started to work in the corporate world. It was my birthday, and I had only been there for like maybe 6 months, and I wanted to throw a party and invite my colleagues to get to know them better, and I started to add people in the to field of my email. And I added all those that I was comfortable with and, become friends. And then I was thinking, oh, but then management will know that I have a party. So I should invite my managers as well. I was very young. And I was like, but how could I put managers in the same to field like, the juniors? Maybe they will feel offended or something. So I put the managers in CC. And then one of them came to see me and he was like, so we are just notified about your party, I presume, and we are not invited. And I felt so bad, you know. So the manager did not come, not that year at least. But the following year, I didn't do the same mistake. But that was a bad moment for me.
So it's like you're just letting them know that they weren't invited.
Yeah.
Happening, but you're
Exactly.
not.
Can you imagine? And I was just feeling I didn't want, because in my head was like, I don't want to impose, you know, I don't want them to feel that they should come. I was on a completely different planet, like really.
That's even more insulting than not telling them, isn't it?
Exactly, of course.
Here's a party and you're not invited.
Oh, that's the communication so much more complex these days, just because of the introduction of technology, isn't it?
There's so many different ways of communicating, and I struggle. I mean, the default mode I would often use would be email, and sometimes if there's something slightly controversial, not even controversial, but you just need to be unambiguous about it, I can spend half an hour crafting an email, and a number of times it's happened. I spend half an hour crafting an email, send it off. Within 2 minutes, there's a response back saying, "What do you mean by that?" And it's coming back in a slightly gruff tone, or maybe I'm just reading it in a slightly gruff tone, but I definitely detect it's not been received in the way that I meant to send it. And I think what I've realised from that as well is it's important to pick the right channel to make sure you can communicate effectively. So sending an email was a sort of one-way channel. I'm not able to moderate what I'm saying. I can't respond to how that the receiver interprets what I've said, and I perhaps should have rung up or gone round to see them. But we've got so much choice now with the different channels that we've got, and this another thing that I find challenging is where messages are fragmented across multiple channels. So you start a conversation on Messenger, and then maybe it continues on Teams, and then maybe it's an email, and then they bring you up or whatever. It's like, okay, now where do I go with this?
Yeah, there's nothing worse than knowing somebody's emailed you or sent a message on Teams or some other instant message and thinking, I know they messaged me, but I can't find it. Yeah, I did it. Honestly, I did it yesterday because I couldn't remember which method this person had used. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to look for keywords, you know. But yeah, like I said, we just spoke really with choice, aren't we, around different ways of communicating these days. Fabulous topic, Miruna. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights with us. If you've got any ideas for any future podcasts, please let us know, as always, at BA Brew at ciskd.com. Thank you both for being on the panel, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I just need to check that I haven't upset any other Sarahs that I know now.
Yeah.
Did he mean me?
I think you need to go off with a little bit now, Mike. Just for a while.
Five messages waiting.
Lovely. Thank you all for your time. Thanks.
Bye.
Yes.